Hello, everyone. I'm Sharon Jaffe-Dan, Editor-in-Chief of Home and Design and Chesapeake Views. As we ease into summer, a lot of us will be heading to the beach and bay to spend time with family and friends after a year of being apart. I can't think of a more idyllic spot to recharge than the home featured on the cover of the spring issue of Chesapeake Views. The owner, who's based in Florida, wanted to build a getaway where he could spend time with his 3 adult kids, all of whom live in New York. He found a perfect 2-acre site on the Tred Avon River near Easton, Maryland, where a previous home had burned down 15 years ago. He turned to his son, architect Daniel Grehl, and Daniel's wife and partner, architect Erika Martins, to design a modern residence on the site. A fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, the owner specified that he didn't want a big white box, but something warm and inviting that would blend into the coastal environment. He also hired Loch Collective to tackle the landscape architecture and think, make, build to construct this very custom residence. Lucky for us, members of the design team are here today to share how this dream retreat became a reality. They'll also discuss the ins and outs of creating a sustainable, carefree getaway to inspire those of us planning a vacation home of our own. I also want to apologize for our technical difficulties. Hopefully you were able to join us a little bit later, but we are good to go now. By way of introduction, Erika Martins and Daniel Grehl founded Martins Grehl Architects in 2015. This husband and wife duo specializes in custom homes. Their mission is to tell client stories through architecture using creative strategies and thoughtful artistic gestures that respect and enhance a home's environment. They also focus on creating high-performance homes with an emphasis on sustainable technologies. Welcome, Daniel and Erika.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Thanks for having us.
Good to
Thank
see
you for
you.
the beautiful introduction.
Thanks for joining us. And Erika and Daniel are actually in the home that we're discussing today, up in the loft, so we can see a little bit of the view out of the window behind them.
Yes, indeed.
Award-winning landscape architect Jordan Loch Crabtree founded Loch Collective in 2016. His passionate interests in art, landscape, and the environment have led him to design projects from the Chesapeake Bay to New York to the Patagonia region of Chile and the Bolivian Andes. Known for his minimalist design of spaces set into carefully crafted natural landscapes, Jordan has spoken internationally and his work has been widely published. Hey, Jordan.
Hey there, Sharon. Thanks for having us.
Of course. Darren Kornas grew up tinkering in his garage. With a father in the construction industry, he spent summers working in the building trades. He later graduated with a degree in political science with plans for law school, but home building ultimately captured his interest. After working as a superintendent for a major national builder and later at a design build firm, Darren launched Think, Make, Build in 2008 with an emphasis on high-end custom homes in the Mid-Atlantic region. Hey, Darren.
Hi, Sharon. Thanks for having me.
Of course, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good to see you all. I hope your summers are off to a good start.
Very well.
Yeah.
And, on this dreary Tuesday, we have a treat in store because we are about to visit this fabulous residence on the Tred Avon River. I'm just going to share my screen. And here is our opening spread of the story. And this shows a beautiful and very dramatic entry that starts with, I know that you all sort of started with the existing driveway here and designed an entry access to kind of lead up and through the house. Maybe you all can explain, Daniel and Erika, how this came about.
Yeah, we were working with a number of site elements, but yeah, we ultimately found a lot of opportunity and success actually using an axial design strategy in a number of different locations throughout the design. The approach is one of those. When we came to the site, it was clear that there was a natural procession from west to east due to the shape of the site. And then things ultimately culminated in this wonderful Tred Avon view that was, again, a strong linear element horizontal, but this gave us this opportunity to structure the circulation of the site, the arrival to the home, through the home to that view in a formal way that juxtaposed what we had going on with the landscape design and the circuitous lines in the landscape as well.
That's great. And Jordan, how did you reinforce the concept in your design?
Yeah, when starting out with Daniel and Erika, they had this, the strong relationship, as Daniel just said, this axo relationship as you approach and enter, and you can see directly through at the front door to the water. And so standing there and looking out, it's also a place where you pass through the main living space. And so it's an opportunity to draw people in the home out to the water on one side and then out into the landscape and ultimately to the meadows that we created in the front of the property. Mm-hmm. And, we'll talk a little bit about the drive, but this ellipse, being, there was a form of a circular driveway there. And so we used that and reformed it into an actual ellipse with a mound and cutting through, we mounded soil that we had excavated from other areas of the site and creating this pathway so that you pass through it and you stop and you pause as you approach the house. And the paths reach out far enough that they really draw people walking out in the landscape back into the home.
Yeah, and I'd love to add that this new elevation of the mound that Jordan brought to the project also does this wonderful thing where, there's this slow reveal of the house as you come up around the driveway. You see glimpses of it, but it's not until you drive all the way around or walk all the way around that you see the full extent of the front facade. So that's a really nice feature.
Yeah, and a lot of clients, they don't go off from an aesthetic point of view, but that's why it's important to think about organizational principles too. And you bring up the axis first, and that's such an important organizational element. It's just one strategy of many, and in this particular case, it ended up looking fantastic, especially with Jordan's landscape treatments.
And we love the idea of not just stopping our design strategies at the perimeter of the building, but extending them beyond so they actually interact with the landscape and everything feels very intentional, from a holistic standpoint, not just building on a lot.
I also love the transition from the gravel path to the more formal stone pathway. It's really great. Starting at the beginning, this is the site plan, and we can see that there is a neighbor here, and then a neighboring home here, and then sort of an untamed property here, and it's kind of a challenging wedge-shaped site. Darren, maybe you can tell us what challenges you saw when you got there, and how did the fact that there was an existing home on the property help in the process?
Yeah, the fact that there was a home there, 15 plus years ago, did help in the fact that the driveway and the entrance, was already there, which made, access to the site that much easier, and was, even though we changed the shape of the driveway, was a little bit of a cost savings for the owner. But it was kind of a double-edged sword because the house had been torn down, well before the clients bought it and our involvement. So no one really had a good understanding of what the people that tore it down, what they left behind for us to find underground once we got started. Luckily, there were no major complications. But when we saw the site, most sites on the Eastern Shore, they're pretty flat. Not a lot of elevation on the Eastern Shore, which is great, because it's an easy site to get around on. But at the same time, water does not like to drain off of a site like that. So if you have a very wet season, getting a house out of the ground, moving equipment around the site can be a bit of a challenge and be a little bit of a detriment to a project schedule. You also, with sites that don't have a lot of elevation and are close to the elevation of the river, you have concerns that when you dig, for your foundation, are you going to hit water? And depending upon the amount of rainfall and the time of year, and where the water table is in any given time, that could be, a cost factor and a time factor if you end up having to mitigate, water surfaces. All in all, I'd say for this project, not a huge amount stumbling blocks during the initial phases.
And I guess because there was a house there, it also helped with some of the permitting and setbacks as far as building on something that existed.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just chime in, there's a huge advantage found here by designing on a pre-existing site that was previously developed. There was a buffer zone, which is that 100 feet from the water, that already had a manicured nature to it. It was not fully grown with trees. And that proved to be a huge advantage in a place that has regulations where you can't cut down or modify anything within that 100-foot buffer. So sometimes starting from a reuse perspective is better than just starting from a new.
Right. Here's a fabulous aerial view of the project. And Jordan, in our interview, we spoke a bit about it being organized, the landscape being organized in 4 quadrants. Maybe you can kind of walk us through those, what those are and how they all relate.
Yeah, so we had 2 organizational kind of datums across the site, and the one moving as you approach the site from the drive out to the water. And so you come into the site, and the client really wanted, thinking ahead to events they might have, birthdays, weddings, different celebrations, a large gathering space. So we kept a generous area at the entrance and created amidst a meadow.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming into the site further, we talked about this ellipse, this kind of entrance courtyard, let's call it. And then coming into the home zone where everybody actually lives. So extending on the non-waterfront side, an entrance courtyard that's lawn that can be occupied. And then on the waterfront side, a pool terrace and dining terrace. And then eventually getting to the 4th, this open space at the water, and how we planted and formed and shaped the views and use out there. And then the second way we looked at it as well was right around the home, these lush perennial and grass mixtures and these plantings, and then going out one that there's movement throughout the site with the lawn that meanders throughout, and then encompassing the site being this native meadow mix that we picked each species that went into it with Erika and Daniel and the client, kind of thinking about what they really wanted to be, if it wanted to be productive, if they wanted bees, all these different things that were considered.
Mm-hmm. And now we're going to take a close-up view of the entry courtyard, which is so beautiful. We reused the metal here. Jordan, maybe you can tell us what the intention was here from a landscaping viewpoint.
Yeah, so Daniel and Erika created these walls to the room of the home. So one wing being the living space on the ground floor that spills out here, and then the other being this backdrop where the bedrooms are. And then behind where the photographer was, there's actually a wall of evergreen trees. So that'll grow up to be the same height as the home. And so there'll be 3 walls to the site with the 4th open out to these trees in the ellipse. And we use the steel panels. They only come up 36 inches. They have 6-inch gaps between it. So it's not meant to feel intrusive or to feel enclosing, but just enough sense of boundary that it makes it its own space where, kids can run around. They can have a small kind of cocktail event. And also mainly that you can spill out from the home and it feels just like an extension of the interior living space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were very interested in creating different outdoor rooms with different qualities of space.
Right. I love this courtyard. Well, this would be a good time, Erika and Daniel, to explain to us a little bit of how the design of the house itself took shape, as far as how you organized it, as well as the beautiful materials we see in this photo.
Sure. Well, the north, west, east, and south sides of the site have very different characteristics, and we actually saw that as an amazing opportunity to treat the different facades in different manners. And with respect to the front facade that we're looking at, we wanted to emphasize privacy, since this is the entrance to the home and you can see it from the street. You can see the neighbor's home. So we wanted to keep it fairly opaque. And that gave us the opportunity to kind of create all these intersecting sculptural forms You can see the mass of the eight-frame roof that runs parallel to the Tred Avon River, and that intersects with the bedroom wing perpendicular to it. And then it's sort of punctuated by this tall form, which is where the stair from downstairs to upstairs is, as well as the sort of more square volume of the entry. So there's all these forms that are intersecting each other, and they get articulated through different use of materials. But we tried to tie the materials together by using materials that were natural, that evoked the same color palette as the surrounding site, and also materials that would sort of patina, that would age with the use of the house, because this is a house that is meant to be multi-generational. So we were very interested in sort of expressing the passage of time through these materials.
I love that. That's great. There's another view, and one of my favorite features of the exterior is this slatted cedar panel, which slides and controls light and temperature. Daniel, can you explain the rationale behind this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of slats. They're multifunctional, as you mentioned. We put these on the outside here primarily to control the western sun as it sets. I think it's very, very strong, and we wanted to have a living room that had a lot of glazing, but this was our way of protecting it. You can cut down 60% of that heat gain just by having these simple slats. And then they have this wonderful added benefit too. It creates wonderful light inside the space, and it gives the client a level of privacy that they can control depending on how they're using the house at any given moment.
Yeah, and I think this opportunity to play with the same material, but at different scales, was something that we really liked about the sliding screen. It also has movement to it, which kind of contrasts with these large expanses. We sort of had these big canvases of the same material, which we loved about that front facade. It gave it this really sculptural quality, but it's also fun to kind of puncture that and play with light a little bit. And what's also really interesting is that at night, for example, with the lights that we put into the landscaping, there are these beautiful shadows of the plants that get cast onto some of these large walls, and it's really pretty to see at night.
I bet that's beautiful. So Darren, as we discuss these materials, I know one of the challenges of modern design and building is it looks so seamless, but there's very little room for error. How do maybe you can tell us about the challenges of how you make sure it looks seamless and making that happen?
Yeah, it definitely to get that look and to have it be seamless at the end of the day. I think to the untrained eye, it looks easy to do and easy to design. I think a lot of people think, oh, a piece of cake, and you can definitely tell the difference between architects who can do modern and those that try. But every material on here, everything installs in a different method. Everything is a different thickness. From a building science perspective, everything, has something different going on behind it, whether you want something ventilated or whether you need something to drain water. And really, how that all comes together starts very early in the process. I mean, as early as putting the foundation in the ground, you're thinking about how that's going to interact with the materials that are going to go on the rest of the building 2, 3, 4 months from now. And I think, the trick is having, a design team that's really cognizant about putting the time into the details to figure out what do we want to use, how do we want it to look at the end of the day, to give their builder the information so we can put in place, what needs to happen. And it requires a large degree of collaboration between the builder and the design team, and the design team that's going to be involved, throughout the life cycle of the project, not just hand a set of drawings off, to the builder and the client, be like, hey, best of luck. But having someone involved through to completion really gives you the kind of product that you see here.
Right, it's so beautiful. And Jordan, I have to ask you about these grasses. They're so beautiful, and I love how they kind of work together in a different tiered. What are the various grasses? I should probably know them by now.
Yeah, so it sweeps up. The idea around the house is that we had the grasses and perennials sweeping up to the structure. So in the front, there's Ceslaria, and then there's a fountain grass. It's the Hamel variety. And in the back, there's a planter at the doorway and the one in front of the deck. And those are both Carl Forster reed grass.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, Jordan did a really cool thing where he interplanted coneflowers in and among that fountain grass.
Yeah.
Can't see the coneflowers here, but they support each other.
I see a few, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
They're just popping up now and they're really pretty.
I bet it's so beautiful. So now we get to go inside and hear some of the materials are repeated. I also love how you broke up or sort of delineated the kitchen and dining area in the foreground with the living area in the background, yet the sight lines are open. Maybe you can tell us about that, Erika and Daniel.
Yeah. One of the challenges of designing a modern home is making it feel intimate, making it feel warm, and ultimately like a home, right? So we wanted to keep these spaces connected and feeling open, and we wanted to maintain a sense of flow between the spaces. So we kept them visually connected, but at the same time, we wanted to spatially separate them so that they feel distinct, they feel cozy, they feel intimate, and more like these warm gathering spaces that our client was looking for. And we sort of helped to delineate these spaces through emphasizing the threshold, which is the foyer in this case. So the way that we chose materials and the way that we placed them, we hope to sort of make a really dramatic transition from one space to the other. You can see that we use this darker tile on the floor. We also carried materials from outside to in and vice versa. So if you look at the ceiling, we have that warm tongue and groove cedar on the ceiling, and it kind of continues out into that exterior courtyard. We also have the fiber cement panels that you saw on that stair tower from the exterior that kind of comes in as this plane, and it looks really beautiful as you walk into the home. And it's this very rich but neutral material palette. And then as you step into that living room space, the ceiling also pops up. So that's another way that we kind of maintain that connection, but differentiated between the space of the kitchen versus the space of the living room, which we wanted to have very different feels ultimately.
Right. I love how you also blurred the lines between indoors and out. So there's this entry courtyard or entry, another little, it's not the entry courtyard. You have like a glassed courtyard here. And we see these wonderful plants that bring in color all year round. So I guess that was another one of your goals.
Yeah, I mean, we had, we had this simple task of framing the beautiful views, and we obviously just use glazing and windows to do that. But we wanted to take it a step further, and we decided to articulate the wall plane a little bit in a number of different areas, and that gave us added light, and it also gave us that ability to bring landscape literally right into the middle of things. So that was one of our little secret design implementations.
Yeah, the house, again, I think I mentioned earlier, has a very clear L-shaped perimeter, right? If you're looking straight down on it, but we tried to puncture that perimeter in both directions. So this is a case where we punctured it with the outside coming in, and then with some of the axes, we're kind of going from the inside out.
Well, here we are in that beautiful living room with the vaulted ceiling, and there is a loft. You all are sitting up here, I believe.
Yes, we are on the right side right there.
So as we saw how the way that you so cleverly separated this from the dining area, Darren, I know open great rooms have been really popular, especially on the water. Do you see a change in that, or are they here to stay, or are people trying to sort of create more delineation or cluster their rooms more?
No, I'd say, your open living, dining, great room area is still what we see on, a lot of the plans that come across, our desk. I think particularly for, second homes, kind of vacation spots, kind of, with where you plan on having a lot of guests. But I think what Erika and Daniel did here, where they were able to, separate the great room from the kitchen area, was really, expertly done with that glass courtyard that kind of maintains that visual connection while still being able to separate the two spaces, physically from noise and things of that nature. Particularly in, the Eastern Shore, you're not putting in basements typically because of the water table height. So you're not going to have an area to kind of let, the younger generation go hang out and make noise while the adults are trying to have their own time. So something along these lines I think makes a lot of sense these days.
That's great. And what drove the interior color palette of furnishings and finishes?
Ultimately, we really wanted the exterior and the view to take center stage. So we kept the color palette fairly neutral. We also were very much inspired by the colors in the natural landscape. So we tried to look to those for inspiration as much as we possibly could. And instead of creating drama through bold colors, we decided to do it through bold shapes. For example, the big fireplace element, we use this really thin, large format porcelain tile that looks like stone, and it's quite beautiful. And it has this serene quality to it, but it's a really strong visual element that we loved. And we also wanted to keep it warm because it is a really tall space. So we brought some of that cedar that you see on the outside inside, and we clad the ceiling in the cedar. And we thought it was a really nice way to warm the space and create a sense of coziness, even though it is such a modern, clean design.
Right?
Yeah, we actually were tasked, it was interesting. Originally, part of the brief included a screened-in living area. It got, we had to kind of drop it, but we were able to integrate some of that into the living area. So we mirrored these large operable sliders on both sides, they mirror one another, so we could actually open them up, put down the screens, and you get this wonderful cross ventilation, and you get a quasi screened living area too.
That's a great idea. Here we have the kitchen, which has views on 3 sides. How did the fact that this was a vacation home influence the kitchen design? And I guess also a vacation home for multi-generations or larger groups.
Well, I think, yeah, that's something definitely for people looking to build a home or vacation home. It's a great thing to keep in mind. In a vacation home, you're going to have a kitchen space used heavily, but in short duration. So that was something that we thought a lot about, and we were constantly weighing storage versus views, because views were such an important part of the project. And in this case, because it was a vacation home, we knew that maybe we didn't need to prioritize storage quite as much. We could have sort of a minimalist mindset as far as, how many things people were going to purchase and try to store long-term in the kitchen. So we took that opportunity to open up the kitchen on both sides with these big walls of floor-to-ceiling glass. We also opened up this large window right in front of the sink. So as you're doing your daily chores, you're still connected to the exterior, which we thought was really important. As you're sitting on that left side of the island, you have this amazing, very long horizontal view of the river, which we thought was really lovely. But there were functional elements that kind of on the converse, we made sure to include. We have 2 sinks, we have 2 dishwashers, because we knew that when the kitchen was used, it was likely going to be used by a lot of people at the same time.
Right. What's for dinner? I think I can be there in a couple hours.
Come on over.
Here we are in the owner's bedroom, which has a fabulous view. Jordan, how did you orchestrate this? I know some of these trees were here, but how did the rear views come into play as you kind of organized the back of waterfront lawn or gardens, I mean?
Yeah, so the owner and the design team, we inherited a lot of decaying, dying, and invasive trees on the waterfront. So there's kind of a smattering of there's a couple sassafras, there's some old pear varieties, and then a lot of trees that were so vine damaged that once we got the vines off of, we realized they weren't even worth keeping, even though some had some beautiful structure. And so we really did it in stages. We met with the county out there. We were in the buffer, and we really talked with them about what trees we wanted to keep and invest in, and then the ones that we wanted to take out. And, both the owner and the architects and I, we didn't want to just take out all the trees to try to open up this view, but rather to frame it, and really framing it from when you walk in the home, from places like this in the bedroom, from the pool terrace, all these things that would, create some protection from the water. And then also, really highlighting the beauty of the water with these trees and the canopies that would grow above it.
Great. We're also sharing some spaces that we didn't have room for in the magazine. This is a fabulous sauna and sauna bath that Erika and Daniel designed. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it. This is off. This, you step into this off of the pool, right?
Right. So it's sort of that cabana bath style, doubles as a powder room, has the sauna component to it. So again, multifunctionary. And there's a very different aesthetic and design language going on here from the material palette that we have elsewhere. So again, we're playing with contrasts, where we have light colored bathrooms pattern, and here we go with something dark, and we have texture, and it's moody, and it's soothing at the same time. So it's very spa-like. And there is the sauna component that we actually were given the opportunity, very, very unique, to actually design but also build that sauna. It's popular to buy kits, and if you don't buy kits, then you're stuck doing something custom, which could be very, very expensive. So this just really was a highlight for us to be able to execute it and design in and put in this wonderful sauna to this bathroom.
And Daniel did a great job designing these floating benches that are really, really nicely detailed. And it was really fun to put it together ourselves and, see the final product.
It's a space where so much of the house is so visually oriented. You're always looking at the views and the water. And then you could come into this type of space and, your other senses really start taking over, the smells of things. And you put a little aromatherapy in there, and the cracking of the wood. It's a wonderful addition.
I personally was very inspired by the thermal bath in Switzerland by Peter Zumthor. He's a really favorite architect of mine. And I got to visit the thermal baths while I was in school several years ago. And it just sort of stuck with me. And he uses these very horizontal, very textured dark gray stones. And the whole building is sort of nestled into a hill. And then there's these little pinholes of light that kind of puncture the ceiling. So that's kind of what I personally had in mind as we were designing this bathroom, is just sort of creating this womb-like space that's really calming, and that, like Daniel says, allows all your other senses to be heightened, listening to the sound of water trickling and things like that. And I did want to highlight the tiles that we used in that other photo you showed, Sharon. We really love these. They're from Clay, C-L-E with an accent, and it's their Eastern earthenware collection, and they have this beautiful patina to them from they're wood fired. So they're all completely different, and some of them have this sort of coppery metallic sheen, others are more matte, and it just has this beautiful, very like living quality to it that we thought was just stunning to look at as you're sitting in the sauna. That's sort of the backdrop. So it's really, really dramatic.
They really look handmade, so beautiful. So now we're back outside, and this is a wonderful view of the meadow. Where incidentally, I think Daniel and Erika got married. Is that true, that the wedding was in the meadow area?
It ended up being in the back. We went back and forth, but Daniel made the call to have it in the back, and it was definitely the right call.
Right. Oh, that's great. Well, this is so beautiful. Jordan, maybe you can sort of tell us or share the environmental benefits of the meadow, and sort of how you approach or broach the subject of lawn for clients who might be more traditional and want a lot of grass versus something that's more eco-friendly.
Yeah, and thankfully we had a client who was receptive to this, and Daniel and Erika were very much on board once we started talking through this. we inherited this site, as I said, that was all lawn. For me, I see lawn as something that should have a purpose. With Law Collective, one of our guiding principles is we want to get people to connect with one another out in nature, and then also connect people to nature. And so creating these spaces to inhabit and be, but then bringing nature back into the site. So we really, we talk through the beauty of it, the aesthetic value. If it would matter over time, it is more cost effective to have a meadow than it is to keep mowing a lawn and maintain it. The other benefits environmentally with, they chose very heavy bee vibrant plants that would come in. And also we end up draining a lot of the water from the site so that all the water that lands on the site stays on it, except for the 10 feet on the waterfront that slopes down, and the same at the entrance. But, really trying to talk them through, if we have a client who says, I'm just kind of scared of it. I have another client that has about 30 acres on the shore as well. And he couldn't get behind it. So we're testing an acre. So we're doing a test plot of an acre because he wants the beauty. He couldn't understand it. And now he's loves it and is sold on it. And, we really focus on the area. So this mix is it's not all native, but we start with a really native base. The first year we do a lot of annuals. We get all the weeds that have come into the site, the invasive species cleaned out. And the second year came back with this custom design mix that we really, got to bring Daniel and Erika and the client into it and, say what they wanted, what colors they wanted and everything. And you can see just after the first year of growth, all the color coming up.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. And talking about going out and connecting with nature, here's a wonderful shot of the rear facade, and the pool is here. There's an outdoor dining area here, a deck off the owner's suite here, lots of opportunities to engage with nature and the beauty of being on the river, which brings me to my next question, Darren. How do you help clients make the right selections to find materials that can withstand the brutal waterfront environment and things that are low maintenance and will last?
Yeah, the environment on the Eastern Shore, I mean, most of your rivers, they are what they call brackish water, which means it's a mixture of fresh and salt water, but it still has, it's not quite the salinity content of an oceanfront home, but it's a lot higher than you're going to find on, Deep Creek Lake in Western Maryland. So it definitely, you see on materials that weren't chosen appropriately, you'll see the wear and tear in a short amount of time in terms of rust and corrosion and things of that nature. Let alone just the amount of wind and kind of water spray that you'll get off the river because you're not protected can be pretty severe. So picking materials, like you said, that are low maintenance, but also able to withstand those kind of conditions over the long haul. So picking things that are resistant to rot and decay or resistant to rust, or making sure the materials you do pick are really installed properly and treated properly prior to installation. So if you're putting, a wood product on the house, making sure it's actually sealed on all four sides before it goes on the building, as opposed to just doing one side. And then just making sure with any building, smart to make sure, managing water on a building. So the water always has a place to go once materials are on there, but picking things, with finishes that are rated properly for exposure, whether it's, the kind of paint that's going on your, windows and doors or your metal siding, taking all those things into account, and planning ahead saves a lot of, maintenance headaches down the road.
Mm-hmm. And here's a wonderful shot of the pool. Jordan, I see you use more grasses here. What was your strategy in kind of accentuating this area without blocking the views?
Yeah, so we kept the grasses and perennial mixture, kind of a max 24 to 36 inches. And when you sit down in the pool, you feel enclosed in the space. Sitting up on the edge, you can see over the grasses to the water, and obviously on the upper deck can really get the full view. So we wanted to engage and give a sense that they weren't, just floating out in the lawn, but then quickly open up those views to have that kind of connect everything back together.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. Well, I want to I have a few more questions, but I also want to invite our viewers to go ahead and ask some questions in the chat. So I'm going to stop our screen sharing now. And Darren, maybe you can tell me, what are just some general guidelines you have for people who are building on the water? What are some things that they should look for in a site, and as they sort of start the planning stages? What are the sort of most important guidelines you have?
Yeah, one of the things is, like as Daniel alluded to earlier, and or Jordan did, waterfront sites have what they call a buffer, which is 100 feet from the water's edge. Additionally, if your site has a large degree of slope down to the water, they add an additional buffer onto that. So you can be, 150, 175 feet back from the water's edge before you can even start building, let alone, depending upon where your, chosen piece of property is, there are setbacks from the property lines that you have to maintain. And particularly with a site like that, with the triangle shape, the county has a requirement for how wide that lot needs to be before you can even start building. So really, enlisting, architect and landscape architect early on when you're looking at properties to determine how, what is my buildable area, and can I actually fit on here what I want to do? Because there are some lots, particularly like the one next door to them, that's undeveloped. It's undeveloped because it's small and it has a huge setback, and I think the area you can build on is like the size of a quarter at the end of
Right.
at the end of the day.
Well, it's nice. It might stay.
Purchase, so
Yeah.
we're curious to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
Well, I think, as you all have shown, assembling the right team early on is key, and making sure that everyone really works well together. And I think that definitely helps a lot. Jordan, for clients who are concerned about sustainability, what are some of your kind of greatest guidelines of things that people should consider when they're planning landscaping projects? And I know some of them you've touched upon, but maybe there are others you can share.
Sure. Yeah, I think water would be one of the leading ones. Something we did here on the site, and I really try to do on any project, is trying to keep all the water we can on the site. And so that means getting it to stay long enough on the site that it actually goes into the groundwater. Mm-hmm. And so we did that, in a lot of different ways here, of grading some of the edges differently. So the water that hits the roof, some of those downspouts, traditional downspouts, are interior, and they come up and they actually go out away from the house into the meadow, and then they daylight back up. And so we're letting that all get a chance to just percolate in the soil. We're getting more water to the areas that would use it and need it. And so that's something, we think about on every project, is how can we not just have to get the water out of here? How can we, and that alleviates a lot of problems in our area, and really get it down in. And sometimes it can be fun. Daniel and Erika, one of the details we didn't see, they had a few areas where they actually cascade the water off the roof of the house down into the landscape. Mm-hmm. And we have it hit a splash pad of river rocks amidst the planting, and those plants get to utilize all of that.
Wow. That's very cool. Daniel and Erika, maybe you can tell us, having just finished this amazing project, what is your advice for people embarking on a custom home project? What are some of the most important things to keep in mind, as well as mistakes to avoid? There's so many decisions along the way.
Yeah, I mean, for me, start early. Start as early as you can. Talk to a lot of people. The more professionals that you could reach out to, you're going to gain bits of information that are going to be very valuable down the road. And on assembling your team, with team and contractor for quite a long period of time, and they're going to make the difference between a good and a great project.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to remember that every location is unique, so it makes a huge difference to do a lot of research into that particular place where you're building, that was something that came into play for us. Being based in Brooklyn, we had to learn a lot about building here on the Eastern Shore. We spoke to Darren and a few other contractors very early on to get a sense of how different things were here from where we were used to building in terms of all sorts of things, you know, the cost of materials, of labor, the availability of certain trades and things like that. So I think getting that kind of information is absolutely critical.
Right. Absolutely. So after you labored over every detail of this house for a long time, what was it like? You had the unusual privilege of also being able to live in it. And I think you spent a lot of time during the pandemic in the home. What was it like to, at the end, kind of be one of the clients and owners of the home?
Yeah, as you said, an immense privilege and a really strange and unique situation to get to see how people use your spaces on a day-to-day basis. The pandemic, you know, really challenged the house and how it was going to be used, because it started to be used very differently than how it was originally planned out for. So, you know, for us, I think, you know, a great lesson is learning how to be adaptable, trying to design in adaptability to your spaces is a very valuable you know, design aspect that, you know, you can, if you think about it, you can integrate.
Right. And you must see so much nature there. It's such a nice change from Brooklyn, I would imagine.
Yeah, we've started a garden officially. So we've been very immersed in nature, and we spend a lot of time outside, especially now that it's warm. And it's a really, really lovely break from, you know, the very different experience of being in the city.
Life is better with contrast, whether it's weathering steel next to flowers or, you know, city to the rural. I mean, it's you know, it's lovely to combine.
Exactly, best of both worlds. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Again, apologies for the delay, and this was a really fun conversation. I hope to see all of you in person soon, but thanks so much for your time, and I learned more about this amazing project today, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sharon.
It was
Yeah,
a great
thank you.
time. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you all. Talk to you soon, and happy summer.